This is Rachael McIntosh, and this is episode 142 of the Athletes Podcast.
142 episodes, Rachel. Can you believe it?
It's my lucky number.
Is it?
No.
I was like, wow, that's a weird way, but okay, we'll start with that. Rachel McIntosh, thanks for coming on the Athletes Podcast.
Thank you. I love talking, so I'm excited to be here.
I know. We figured, you know what, since you like talking so much, we're like, let's just chat about life. We're not even going to talk about athletics now. No, I'm just kidding. All about Biosteel, all about track and field.
Totally.
High performance. I want to maybe just have you start by introducing who you are, your role, your athletic upbringing, your background, and then I'll just interject rudely and ask some questions.
No, of course. I was like, that's a lot, so it might take me on a tangent. But my name is Rachael McIntosh. I'm from a small town in Nova Scotia, from a family of 6. Mom and dad, both teachers, like really involved in the community. So just from a young age, all of us, they were like, we need to keep them busy. We need to get them in after school sports so we can get stuff done in our classrooms. Okay. So just from a young age, I did every sport with my siblings. We were usually all on the same teams, at least the girls and the boys kind of thing were. And, I left home at a young age and went to University of Pittsburgh. And then from Pittsburgh, I went out to Calgary. And now I find myself living in Calgary 13 years later, but I work for Biosteel, which is a company that used to sponsor me when I was an athlete. So from childhood, just kind of jumped into sports. All sports didn't really matter, and specialized later in life. And now here I am full circle working for one of my first ever sponsors.
Yeah, that is a full circle situation. Heptathlete growing up, you basically looked like you played everything at one point to some degree. Is that what you have to do over in the Maritimes? Just keep busy?
Honestly, there's like 7 athletes in every town. No, it's very much just like if you go to a small school, you're on every team kind of thing. And
okay.
I think in my case in particular, just a lot of like general athletic natural talent. So you end up playing every sport, and my parents taught a few, and again, there were
no big
a
deal.
lot of
Yeah. A little humble brag there. It's okay.
Dad was a hockey coach, mom did cross country, but it was very much just like there's only so many athletes in the school, so you'll just be on every team. So I did.
Makes sense. I mean, when you're growing up in the same city that Sidney Crosby comes from, that's probably a bit of an inspiration, I can assume.
What's funny is when you're a kid, like you don't really even hear about those things. You're like, who's that person? To be honest, I hate to say that. When you get into your teens, you care a little bit more. And then there's the people ahead of you. There was an Olympian from my town ahead of me. And you care a little more when you're older. Jenna Martin. She was a 400-meter runner in track and field.
Okay.
But I feel like at a younger age, no, I didn't really care. I was just like, I'm going to do this sport. My mom signed me up for it and threatened me if I don't go every day, there will be repercussions. So.
What other sports did you play growing up?
I mean, we all started in gymnastics. We did soccer, can skate. And so I started in figure skating and then transitioned into hockey, swimming, but primarily soccer, figure skating, hockey, track and field, basketball, volleyball, primarily.
Everything. Yeah, primarily. Okay. So you end up performing, making Team Canada, representing, putting that maple leaf on your chest. Like, how does that feel?
You know what? It's so funny. Like, I remember it being both surreal and both just like cool at the same moment. I remember when you're in a small town, it's not hard to like stand out.
Right.
So you're kind of the best kid at this sport, best kid at that sport. I don't sound very humble right now, but it just kind of at that age, I was like, okay, this is the next team I'm going to be on kind of thing. So there was a moment where it was just like, this is what's happening next. Cool. And then there was also a moment, I think, when I got on the airplane with Team Canada and landed in Trinidad at my first competition. I was like, oh, this isn't just the next step. This is like very cool. So I had moments where I wasn't super humble. I was like, yeah, it's just the next step. And then I had moments where I was like, wow, I'm really down here in Trinidad right now doing this. Like, this is far from Bridgewater, Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I can imagine. And like competing internationally with all these other athletes around you's got to be slightly intimidating. You're like not used to that situation. I'm sure there's a lot of emotions.
Yeah, I feel like I don't remember getting all that nervous, but it's funny. I'm so far out of it now. I can remember the later years a lot better. The early years were such a blur, and I was never super focused on track and field being my future. Like, I kind of fell into track and field. And so the first couple like international competitions were very much just like, where am I supposed to be? What am I doing? Like, I had never like planned my whole life for it or anything like that. So I just got there and I was like, this is very cool, but why me?
Yeah. Well, one of the YouTube videos that I watched in preparation for this was you talking about the journey is the reward. And that's why you do everything. And I know you touched on it before we started recording about how it kind of fell into your lap and you kind of were just opening doors for yourself. I'd love for you to share kind of the inspiration, thought process around sport.
I mean, I think sport is one thing, but every single thing I do in my life. So a former CEO and I had coffee last week together, and he goes, I describe you to my wife as Forrest Gump. He's like, you just kind of wander around and you bump into all the right people. And I was like, you're not wrong, but there's also like a lot of work that goes into that. And the work that goes into that is just meaning I always have my head on a swivel. Like, I'm always looking at the peripherals. Yes, I'm an athlete right now, but I never had tunnel vision. I was like, what's behind this door? What's in this building? Like, what does this person do outside of their job? And I was very much just like taking in the full environment, where I think some people are so focused on the competition or, what performance they have to do or like what they've done to lead up to that moment. Whereas I'm walking on the track and I'm like, I wonder what other sports they play. And like, do they volunteer here? And like, like the cafeteria lady, maybe I'll talk to her after. So I was very much like, the journey of like the all-encompassing environment of sport, the, PST staff and like the people who help you out, the medical team. I did a really good job at absorbing a lot when I was an athlete. And then it kind of just makes the transition out of sport better. It makes like any little thing, last minute late night calls to, your therapist, it makes it better because you humanize them along the way. Whereas I'd never had that tunnel vision, and I didn't make it as far as a lot of other athletes, which probably is because of that, because my eyes were all over the place. But I do think a lot of it is contributed to not being so tunnel vision from day one. It was very much like, what else could come from this environment or this experience or these people? And it was always like, what else is around? And that's where like the Forrest Gump is. I'm just wandering around, bumping into people, being like, what could you do for me down the road? Or how could I help you one day? And I think it's the perfect way to describe me.
I love it. So as you know, our goal is to educate, entertain, and inspire the next generation of athletes. And I thought it would actually be a perfect story to bring yours on, because as much as we glamorize the NHL, the MLB, the NBA athletes that we have on, it's also a case where, hey, there's a lot to life after sport. And you can flourish in a sport role, still be an athlete, go to CrossFit at 6 a.m. when your boss makes you. Shout out to Mark. Like, yeah. That's stuff that you have to do, right?
Yeah.
And like, as an athlete growing up, there's benefits to learning and applying the knowledge that you get from sport afterwards.
Totally. And I think too, like, not being so, this is what I'm going to do and this is where it's going to take me, and being so set on those two things, and being a little bit more open-minded to, recognizing this won't last forever, not being completely naive, but you also have to, you have to be focused on your sport. So I get there's a difference between being focused on your sport and then having to prepare for life after sport at the same time. But I mean, working for a company right now like Biosteel, that was something that started for me 12 years ago or 10 years ago. And when I joined that team as an athlete many years ago, I did think in the back of my mind, like, I love this company. I love what they're about. I love the product. I love the people that work there. And I paid attention to that over the years. And I think it was, the journey is the reward. And it always is. It's like every step of the way has things that you need, signals that you need to pay attention to. And that's the biggest thing that I think some athletes can miss out on. A lot of them do absorb a lot of it, but there's so much more that comes from sport than just the moments where, I'm a great athlete, or I went to this competition or here. And, I accomplished a lot, and I have a tendency to downplay my accomplishments quite often. So I accomplished a lot and I'm really proud of it. But when you compare myself in the, large scale of the world, I never had a very high world ranking. I never went to the Olympics or world championships. But what I've been able to do with what I accomplished after sport is significantly higher than some others who've achieved those things. So sure. I think by absorbing so much along the way and not just thinking, I am an athlete, I need to accomplish X, Y, Z, take in a little bit more of the journey, take in a little bit more of what's happening around you, what those people around you are doing. And then you really do get a lot more afterwards, which I think there's a lot more years after sport than there are in sport.
100%. And I think like post sport isn't something that's talked about enough. And a lot of athletes, what's your peak? 28, 29 years old, maybe into your 30s. LeBron James, if you spend $1 million a year on your body, maybe late 30s. But like, that's not lasting very long. And, hopefully we're living to at least 100 nowadays. Yeah. And, that's 70, 60 plus years where you're going to have to figure out what else the heck you're going to do. So maybe opening some doors, listening to other people is probably not a bad idea. What is your proudest accomplishment? You mentioned that there. I'm curious.
Interesting. My proudest accomplishment. I think When I left Nova Scotia and I moved to Pittsburgh, I was on a full ride scholarship, and from a family of 6, that's significant. Huge. And so the American scholarship was like over 50,000 K a year, and offered an opportunity to come and train with the Canadian team in Calgary, where there was no scholarship available to me. I got $0 from the University of Calgary, and I had nothing promised to me from the government. And as a young, like 18 or 19-year-old, however old I was, I took advantage of like seeing the long-term potential of coming back to Canada and working with such a great coach. And I think I'm most proud of making that really difficult decision. And like, I was partying in Pittsburgh. Like, it was amazing. I was doing really well. I had an amazing like group of friends, like the University of Pittsburgh, it's a D1 school. I was traveling to great places. And I think at that age to recognize like longevity is important. Like there are, getting a proper education is important, which I could have gotten there, but the education systems are a little different. So I think my greatest accomplishment and my proudest moment was probably making that decision to move to Calgary, and hands down the best thing I ever could have done, like best decision I could have made. But it's definitely, when you look over your career, there's a few that stand out, and that one doesn't always come up. But I think in this moment right now, like that was a huge decision for like young person to make.
Yeah, at 18 to decide, hey, I'm going to give up this full ride scholarship and go somewhere where I'm not guaranteed anything is a huge transition. Actually had a fun story about University of Pittsburgh. Played volleyball with their gymnastics team when I was 18. It was a pretty big deal at the time, not gonna lie. Won't go into details.
Amazing.
I know.
They had a good gymnastics team too.
It was a highlight of my trip for sure.
Amazing.
Mexico, good times, not gonna lie. But maybe like highlight from University of Pittsburgh, what was that like, transition down to the NCAA as a Canadian? Probably a little intimidating, probably some nerves playing there.
No? I'm still not intimidated very, very much. I left home, and like a month after I left home, my mom had to call the coach and be like, did she make it? Like, I was on that airplane out the door, and I was like, see ya. Like, right. It is insane how much I was just like, I'm going to take this all in. I obviously left home here and there to like travel to smaller competitions, but I'd never lived anywhere else. And so it just was a very seamless transition. I hate to say, I like jumped into it. I thrived. My first year I competed really well. So you know what? A really standout moment though for me. So my coach down there who recruited me, she was a Romanian lady. I loved her. And she was tough, and she didn't take anyone's crap. And she was just like, we're all going to work. We're going to do it the old school way. And so right away she recognized that being from Nova Scotia, I had a lot of those like tendencies instilled in me from my coach. So I was leading warm-ups like 2 weeks into like being a freshman, like leading the seniors through a warm-up. So I think that was a really cool moment. But again, like it takes the confidence that I had being like, all right, everyone line up. Like, it was like a lot. It's a lot. I am a lot.
Well, East Coast swagger.
Yeah. But you know what? I think that's another thing that like, it's been my weapon all along. It's my biggest flaw by far, because I'll walk into any room, demand attention, and everyone's like, who are you? But at the same time, I feel like to have the confidence as a freshman to walk in and be like, hey, everyone, like I've been told I'm leading warm-up today. Let's do this. So kind of gave me like a great amount of confidence to just know that like I might be playing with the big dogs, but I am a big dog too. And I mean, it was just a phenomenal year. I could talk about it for hours, but we made the move to Calgary, and I really enjoyed it in a different way. It was maybe more serious, but it was just fun and exciting, and like just all of it down there. It was top notch.
I love it. Yeah. Sometimes you got to let the big dogs eat, right?
Yeah.
And that's what they let you do in that year. Talk about Calgary. I know you're a Flames fan. That might not be well received as we record here in Toronto, but like, how do you feel about the trades that went on? Are you rattled that Tkachuk's gone, losing Johnny Hockey? Like, give me the Cole's notes. How you feeling?
I am so excited. I think so. Obviously, there were a couple of weeks where it was like, oh my God, Johnny's gone and Matthew's gone, and then you start seeing him sign. Getting Hubie, getting Uyghur, but then the extensions and getting Kadri, and like I think we're a better team than we were last year. I think the hype around our team right now, after making it to the second round last year. Obviously, we got out early, but like there is like a lingering hype from that in the city still. And I know myself, like I'm excited right now talking about it. I think we're a better team. I think we're going to start strong. I think we like really came together as a team last year. And I think these guys postseason are pretty strong from what I've seen. So I'm really looking forward to these guys being on our team. And we will see you in the third round, whoever we're facing. Or at the cup. Like, what am I saying?
Yeah, called out. Hey, they're fueled by Biosteel now, so they've got to be performing better.
You know it.
Right? Yeah, no free ads there, by the way, Mark. Just curious. Well, you've got Markstrom as your goalie.
Yes.
You've got Chris Tanev, former Vancouver Canucks. I'm also going to attribute a lot of your guys' success to those two players, just because that's Vancouver, my team. But like, how do you like enjoy the fact that every night you can go out and watch your team now being sponsored by the organization that you work for? Like, it's got to be a pretty surreal moment that you can have that impact.
It's amazing. I mean, Biosteel was born in the hockey locker room. We were created by hockey players. Michael Camilleri is one of our co-founders. And it was one of those products that everyone thought of it as a hockey product. So for 10 years later now to come full circle and for it to be the title hydration partner of the NHL, it's just, for me, it seems like a natural progression, kind of like out of high school, going to Team Canada. It's just like, duh, that's the next step. But to now see it come October, to have every bench with red water bottles, to have all the players drinking the Biosteel, like, I've been preaching this message for 10 years. Like, Biosteel is what you need to be drinking. If you're an athlete, if you're any individual, hydration is important. And so to now see these players that, A, I love the Flames, and B, it's just like, to know that they're just drinking like the best product that's out there for them. And it's a company that I work for, and I'm so hype, and our Flames are going to do even better because they've got extra supply in Calgary.
What is it that makes it so much better? Like, from a random guy who works out like 3-4 times a week occasionally, like, I'm trying to improve my performance, why should I be taking Biosteel? And like, maybe what are those 3 benefits that people will notice, like, kind of off the hop if they're not hydrated properly?
Right. So Biosteel is clean, healthy hydration. And so there's lots of other companies out there that make products for hydration. Clean and healthy are 2 really important things for us. That's one of the key, that's why we created the product. Michael Camilleri had some food sensitivities, didn't want sugar in a product where he was going to be hydrating. So any color that you have is coming from a plant or food source. Anything that's in there, the plant-based amino acids, everything is the cleanest, healthiest ingredients. Basically, it's the high-quality ingredients. And then all of our powders are also third-party tested, so they're free of any banned substances. There's a lot of things out there that don't have to disclose what's on the label or what's inside of it on the label. So everything with that stamp there now that we have on it, the NSF certification, that means that everything that's on the label is all that's inside of it. So there's no additives, no preservatives. There's a lot of other products out there that have colorings and have, a preservative that if you leave it out in the sun for weeks at a time, it'll stay the same color. That's not normal and that's not natural. And so our product is just the best out there in terms of high quality ingredients. It's third party tested, and it's just as clean and healthy and natural as you can get, not to mention just exactly what you need in one little box.
Yeah, it is something that we've started incorporating into our daily routine. I was sitting in the sauna a couple times a week and was super low energy for a while and couldn't really figure out why that was. And you sent out a nice little care package from Biosteel, and I probably within a couple of days just had an immediate impact. And I didn't realize it, but I was just super dehydrated, and I would crush water but with nothing in it, which is actually dehydrating you even more, especially when you're not getting that salt and sodium in amongst the other great ingredients. What's the biggest, or what's your favorite product?
Oh goodness. So I'm a hydration powder girly. Ever since, I've been a Biosteel athlete for over 10 years, and we had the beetroot, the mixed berry was our one flavor for 8 of those years. So now it's just indulging in all the other flavors that we have. I would say the white freeze is definitely my favorite powder flavor. In the ready to drinks, it's the cherry lime flavor.
So good.
It's so good. I love it.
Yeah.
But the thing that's important now for everyone to realize is, yes, we've always been a sport related product. We've always been a hockey product, I guess. But hydration is important for everyone. And it's it doesn't matter if you walk, run. It doesn't matter if you're on an airplane, you're living in a city with dry, cold environments, cold weather. It's important to hydrate, and you need clean, healthy hydration. And that's the best way to do it, especially if you're not physically active. To not have all those other things in there is the best. So that's the kind of message that I'm trying to share with people right now is yes, I'm an athlete and I'll advocate for the brand and what it did for me as an athlete. But as an individual, I think it's very important to understand that everyone needs to hydrate. It's so important.
It's actually interesting you bring that up, because I was talking with friends about this podcast, and I'm not getting through to the average human being. I've got high performers listening, and I've got young athletes interested, but we don't have the everyday mom and dad or father, son that's just going for a walk or playing golf casually. Everyone needs to be healthy. Everyone needs to be moving. Everyone needs to stay active. Everyone also needs to hydrate, and it shouldn't just be the guy that's going out and putting in 6-hour workout sessions every week. It's got to be that other 95% of the population that's also not a high performer, but still wants to get the same nutrients and benefits from it.
Totally. And I think too, even in terms of how the podcast goes, is you don't have to be an athlete to get messages, things like that. The journey is the reward. I have it tattooed on my side. I got that a little bit young, but it's one of those messages that, like, if you just understand, like, in your day-to-day life, that there's something to be taken from every day, from every environment, from every opportunity, that's something that you can translate whether you're an athlete or not. And so it's just continuing to share that general message and helping people understand that there's a lot to be learned from the journey of athletics, because you spend so much time getting to know yourself and your thought process and how you speak to yourself. There's a lot to be learned about how to apply that after sport and life, you know? And so even if you've never been an athlete, there's a lot of things that we've learned just from being so in tune with ourselves that you can take to your success in life outside of sport. And I'm a fitness instructor. And I mean, I'm not a fitness instructor because I was a track athlete by any means. I'm a fitness instructor because I know those things you need to hear to take like one more step. I know those things that I have to say to get someone to pick up those heavier weights. Like, I know those messages because I had to, for so many years, tell myself them. And I'm not a fitness instructor because I love running. It's because I feel like I have that internal ability to speak to the challenges that they're all going through. And like, no one in my fitness classes is an athlete per se, but they're all, you know, able to benefit from what I learned over the years. So
yeah, and they're an athlete in their own right.
Oh, absolutely,
and
absolutely.
It's probably the loosest definition in the English dictionary, because you know, stepping up and going for that 5-minute walk is an athletic endeavor.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And
if you have a body, you're a runner, or you know, you're an athlete.
Exactly. I love the self-awareness piece that you brought up, though, because athletes, that's essential to be able to get that. Where do you get that from? Because I feel like I heard this in an interview that you did like 10 years ago, that you had this self-aware perspective. Is that from your parents? Where's that stem from?
I'm not sure exactly. I could credit it to a few different things. I mean, being in an individual sport versus a team sport, I think as I got older gave me like so much, I was much better at it, I guess. So as an individual athlete, you're the only person responsible for your outcomes, for, you know, your performances. So every day you go home and you analyze how you did and how you felt, and, you know, what doing well felt like, or how your body felt, and how you have to approach your coach and say, this didn't feel good, even though I know you recommend it, I have to suggest we do something else. And you have to recognize to like go to bat for yourself and to really understand what your needs are. Same with being a full-time university student and a full-time athlete. You know, I had to go to my coaches and say, I've chosen to prioritize sport, and I need you to understand I won't be in class tomorrow. How can we work together, kind of thing. So it's being really understanding of like, I'm number one, and being able to communicate that to the people around you. I feel like there's just something about always thinking about what do I need right now, but then like, I'm not sure because I've never lived another life. Like that's just the life I've lived. Maybe I'm just like so full of myself that, you know, I just want everyone to cater their lives to me. But I just think that being self-aware has given me the ability to get where I need to get, but like by also working with those around me to like make that happen, kind of thing, I guess. And maybe it's because I'm from a big family and I just needed to learn how to like do my own thing, so we didn't all end up doing the same thing. I'm not sure where that comes from, but I mean, you work with a lot of sports psychiatrists and psychologists, and they help you like really get introverted and think about like internalize how things physically felt, how things mentally and emotionally felt. And it's just a lot of like focus on yourself, I guess, over the years. I don't know. It's really hard to put into words how you become so self-aware, but I do think as an individual athlete, that's a huge part of it and a huge part of having success. And the one thing that again, is my biggest strength, but also my biggest weakness is if I feel something, I say it, and I'll say it, and I will tell you to your face, whether you're, you know, my colleague, my boss, my coach, my mom, my sister, you will hear how I'm feeling. And I think it's really good at, you know, communicating what that internal person needs, like what that individual needs. And again, it's not always in my favor, but it's helped me get some places in life, I think.
Well, you probably grow up, family of 6, you got to fend for yourself. So I think you got to take care of number one, right?
Yeah.
And then you probably over time realize the power of collaboration and bringing people together, striving towards a similar goal. I think that's part of what's beneficial of having multiple siblings. Like, people who are an individual growing up on their own and have their parents catering to them have no idea what it's like trying to get that extra scoop of mashed potatoes off the table when there's 4 other siblings going through, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my theory. When it comes to sport right now, where you're at after competing at arguably the highest level. What are some things that you've learned that you would suggest to that average Joe or to that weekend warrior that you would say, hey, like, just start with this on your fitness and health journey that's going to allow you to see success long term, not just shred 10 pounds and then regain it all 10 weeks later?
Yeah, I mean, I get asked this a lot, is like, how do I run more, or how do I achieve this distance in running or whatever? And I will always say, run when you want to, don't run when you don't want to. If you're enjoying it, you'll do it more. If you're doing it on days when you're not enjoying it, you're not going to continue to do it. It's like being on a diet. You'll do it for 4 days, you'll feel great, and then you have 3 bad days in a row and you don't want to start that diet up again. I think listen to yourself. If you're having fun doing it, do it every single day. Yeah. If you're not enjoying it, take that day off. Or you wake up tired, don't do it that day. And for me, it's like, and I say this in my fitness classes a lot too, it's being part of something more than just like the goal of running or just going for a run, being part of a community, having someone to do it with, having something else where it's like, I'm more awake for work if I do this first. Yeah. Having an external that's not just, I need to run further, or I need to run faster, or I want to lose this weight. Like, those aren't as easily for me to, like, I can't enjoy those, or I can't get extra benefits from those. So for me, you know, my advice is, on the days that it's fun and the days you want to do it, do it. On the days that you're tired or you don't want to, or there's something else that you've been invited to do, don't do it. And I think you're going to get the results by enjoying it way more than by pushing yourself and suffering through it. And there might be some days where you have to listen to the voice in your head. Like, do I really not want to do it today? Or do I just do I really need the day off or not, I guess? And, you know, on those days that are a little more challenging, just reach out and see if someone wants to do it with you. Like, make it more enjoyable. Say, okay, you know what? I can get 2 hours of really good work done because I know I feel really good when I come back from my runs. I do all my workouts at 6 a.m. now because afterwards I start work and I'm so much more alert. I could roll out of bed and start work at 6 a.m., but I'm not going to be alert. But now I do my workouts at 6 a.m., not necessarily because I like to work out, but because I know it'll impact my work day significantly. And so I think if you want to do something, make sure it's fun, or make sure that part of it is like you're getting something else out of it. And it's not just like the goal is to run, you know, like, and that might be your goal. And there might be, you know, that might not apply to everyone, but for me anyway, if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to wake up and do it.
It's so true. And like the power of habit stacking more than anything, like the way you were talking about it there, having your workout, you know, you're going to do it at 6 a.m. It's a constant in your day, and you know, it sets you up for success later. You're probably making healthier choices throughout the day because you went for that run in the morning, because you know you're off to a good start. All of those things build momentum on your day-to-day life. And then you're creating a positive habit with reinforcement that's also good because you get a work day out of it that's positive. I'm a huge fan of morning workouts, despite the fact that you maybe can't lift as much weight and get, you know, you got to wake up a little earlier, but it just sets you up so much better for the rest of your day. And I can't recommend it enough to more people. So I'm glad you brought it up. Maybe share what your biggest misconception was about pro sport, about traveling, going to all these incredible places, competing. As I mentioned earlier, like, not all of pro sport is glamorous. It's not all sunshine and rainbows when you're lacing up to play for the Calgary Flames. Although it might seem like it, you know, there's hardships and difficult things you have to go through. What did you have to go through and experience?
I mean, I think the biggest misconception, and this is speaking from the outside in, is that people are pro athletes. I was not a pro athlete. Pro athlete is such a small percentage of athletes in general. I mean, in track and field in Canada, we might have like 10 pro athletes total. And so I get referred to a lot as an Olympian. I'm not an Olympian. I get referred to a lot as a pro athlete. I was never a pro athlete. Amateur is the word I like to use, but like even then, like the biggest misconception by other people, I think, is that there are a such thing as pro athletes. It's like barely anyone is a pro athlete. And the definition of a professional athlete is, you know, you have an Under Armour or a Nike contract. You're being paid to be that athlete. Now, I was a carded athlete, so I got paid every month from the government, very, you know, small salary, we'll call it. But I
small emphasis on small.
Small, but teaches you a lot when you have to struggle like that, though. So I appreciate it. But yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that you're taken care of, and I kind of, you know, I've struggled all throughout my life financially, just like feeling comfortable because I never had any money really. But I think it's taught me a lot about value of every dollar that I have coming in. So I think a misconception is, you know, every team, your flights are paid for. Like, I mean, teams are, I guess, but camps aren't always. And sometimes I needed to make a team, so I had to fly myself to Europe. Like, there's a lot of money that goes out in order to get any in, kind of thing. And, you know, I lost my karting my last couple years because I had a couple injuries, and for whatever reason, I just wasn't getting paid. And my last few years of track and field, I completely self-funded to the point where I don't know why I retired. It was one of those mysterious, just like, I'm going to be done today moments. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was thousands of dollars in debt. And I knew, you know, I had a severe discomfort with money I always had, you know, in some journals, and I'd spoken with some of my sports psychs, if I hit this number, I'm done. I don't care if I'm the best I've ever been. If I think it was $10,000 in debt, I'm done. I'm walking away. I got my education for free. I'm very well set up for the rest of my life. I don't want to start digging myself in a hole of debt if I don't have to. And I stopped $6,000 in debt, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot of money. And, you know, I was only working part-time. And so it's one of those things where I think the misconception is that you're always taken care of. The good thing is, I think I've learned a lot about money management, and I think that I'm very good. You know, I got myself out of that hole in just a year or two, and I'm really good with my finances. Now, I do think compared to a lot of people, though, I have that fear of debt that I think for everyone else, I shouldn't put blanket statement it, but I think I fear debt a lot more than others. And I'm not sure why that is. Maybe because I was always living, you know, for like, I have to maybe fly somewhere tomorrow, so I've got to save my pennies kind of thing. But I do think, you know, it's not a cushy life, but it can teach you a lot if you are smart about it.
Yeah, there's exceptions to every rule, but across the board, I think I'll make a blanket statement and say that every athlete, pro sport, whatever the case may be, would benefit from being financially constrained for the beginning of their career. Because to your point, you learn so much more about finances and are going to have so much more success over the next 5 decades of your life because you know you have financial literacy compared to a lot of athletes. How many NFL guys over the past couple months signed multi-million-dollar contracts and are going to be paid out weekly thousands of dollars, like more than that $6,000 that you were in debt on a weekly paycheck that they're going to blow at the country club or the bar that night. Like, oh man, I wish that as much as and as difficult as it probably was for you at the time, it probably is going to be paying dividends. And I'd love for you maybe to just like reinforce that, because this next gen needs to hear that.
That's what I was just going to say, is I think that's what people need to hear. And what I don't know that I heard, you know, money is the hardest topic to talk about ever, like with your friends, with your colleagues, with your partner. Like, it's hard to talk about money, and it's like taboo to talk about money. But I think hearing someone say that's struggling a little bit, and like for you, that might be a $2,000 threshold. For me, it was $10,000. But to understand that like that struggle, you're not going to be in that hole forever, but also, you know, it also made me a bit of a hustler in the sense that like I had sponsors. That's my number one thing I think for the next gen is like, you need to believe in you. You need to have that confidence, be that big dog. You need to believe that it doesn't matter if I'm the best. If someone wants to support me, let them support me, or go out and convince them to support you. And I was really good at that. And that's how I got this Biosteel deal 10 years ago when I was 22 years old. I was nowhere near the top of the world, but the guy at Athletics Canada, Matthew Jentz, he said, you know, I'll give you a couple of Olympians that you can sign, but I also want you to bring on this Rachael girl. She's building a brand. She's got a Twitter. She's got a website. Like, I had all of that really early on. And it was one of those things where I did a really good job at saying, okay, I'm not really getting any money right now, so what am I going to do about it? And the what am I going to do about it, kids these days are way more innovative than I was. I just got Twitter and a website, and then it somehow got me a Biosteel, you know, partnership. But I think the biggest message for kids now is like, don't be afraid when, you know, I had karting and then I lost it, and I did not change a thing. I still wanted to be a great athlete. I still flew to Europe. I still trained in Arizona. Like, I still did those things I needed to do up until my threshold. And as soon as I got close to that and I started thinking, do I, you know, leave sport now? Because it's, choose somewhere that you're comfortable getting to, and then just like continue to do what you need to do until that kind of approaches and you can reconsider. But I think I think don't be afraid to talk about finances with your parents, with your teammates, with your coaches, with former athletes, with current athletes who are maybe like 5 years ahead of you. I think money should not be taboo. And I think I'm open to talk to anybody about things like that, because there were some years when I lived off $16,000. There was one year I made $50,000 and I thought I was the richest person on earth. I mean, up until I had a full-time job a few years ago, that was the most money I'd ever made in my life. And so it's wild that people are afraid to talk about that. But I think it's very important that the next gen understands, like, a lot of that's in your hands, and you might get him money for a little while, but that money will come and go. And so you need to just know what you need to do to get where you need to get. And if that money goes away, just find a way to get it.
Yeah. And because there's lots of ways to make money.
Tons.
There's a lot of money out there. And it comes, I almost attribute, like, correlate it the same way to, like, working out. And it's like, you're not going to see the results of working out after one workout, after two workouts. But you keep putting up that bench press and you keep wrapping it out. Eventually, you're going to see success, and you're going to start to see the fruits of your labor come to success. It's the same thing with money and learning your financial skills. It's like studying for school. Like, progress is not linear. And whether it's in finances, athletics, whatever the case may be. So I think that's, like, where I want to make sure that people listen and, like, take note, write it down, save your money, but spend your money on good things like Biosteel. And speaking of saving money, you should use the code AP30. Save 30% on any Biosteel item. Any of your favorite stories that you come from the world of sport? Any in particular that stand out to you?
You know what's so funny? I feel like people always ask me questions like, how did this feel? Where did you come from? And I was thinking yesterday, I was like, what are some, like, unique stories? And I thought of this one moment, which is so unusual that I don't think I've ever told this story before.
Look at this.
But I was like 18, fresh out of high school. I made my first ever Team Canada 2009 Pan American Games in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, like, I'm just wide-eyed, like, where am I? What's going on? I remember the night before, actually, this isn't even part of the story, though. My teammate, Matthias, he was a steeplechaser from the same small town as me, had bird feathers in his chicken before his race. Like, it was just, like, very, like, where are we? What is happening? So I go to Trinidad, and I remember it was really, really hot, and there was pouring down rain. You couldn't even see in front of you. So at the start of the 200, they had us all sitting on, like, this. We were just waiting for the rain to let up, basically. So we're just sitting there. And I'm, like, nervous, but I'm not. And all of a sudden, my ankles are on fire. And I was just like, man, this is a new feeling, but okay, like, Team Canada. And I looked down, and there were, like, 300 red ants crawling up my ankles, biting me. Just, like, I must have had the most inflamed. So right before my 200, I was, like, dancing around, taking my shoes off, kicking all these red ants out of my feet. And I swear to God, my adrenaline was so high. I couldn't tell you what I ran, but I bet it was a personal best, because either I had been completely exhausted from the adrenal rush before my race and I was slow, or the opposite, that it was, like, a really good race. Because I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, what's a random story? And I got completely attacked by ants at my first ever competition. I was in Trinidad, and I was like, what is happening? What are these bugs?
You're lucky they didn't pick you up and carry you away. 300 of them. That would have been nerve-wracking.
It was gnarly. Like, they were everywhere, and I don't know how no one else noticed or got bit. It was just me. My feet were in an ant's nest.
Yeah, I think they liked the ankles. That was a big one for them. You mentioned Twitter. Is that your favorite social media platform?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. I love Twitter. All things Twitter. I love to talk. I feel like from day one, if I have a thought up here, it comes out here. And my biggest detriment, I think. But I also think, like, it's paid off as well.
For sure.
I love it. And I don't always have anything interesting or funny to say. Sometimes I just say things and whatever. But Twitter is where you find information. It's where you find entertainment. It's just, I love Twitter.
I took a little hiatus off Twitter, but I'm getting back into it. It's fun. Definitely recommend. We're trying to get the Athletes podcast promoted more on Twitter.
There you go.
Lots of Twitter people there like podcasts. But who's your favorite follow on Twitter?
Did
you say Spittin' Chicklets?
I was gonna say Biz Nasty, probably. Yeah. I mean, that's just my personality. I love hockey. I love just, like, banter, and I like people who take themselves seriously and love what it is they do, but are also just, like, a bit of an a-hole too. You know what I mean?
Were you at that Stampeders game that Biz was firing up the crowd?
No, I didn't get to it. No, but I feel like that cow is actually so fast. So I'm very impressed that he beat him.
That guy's an athlete also. So, I mean, I question after post-career whether he's done the same things that you've been able to do, but
I think he's got a few more checks in the bank, but
maybe a couple, but like you said, money doesn't matter. It comes and goes. It's all good, right? Okay, so where should people find you on social media? On Twitter, I know it's Run Rachael on Instagram, I believe.
Yeah,
Am I
Run
right?
Rachael on Instagram. Twitter's actually Air Canada 1, so Air_Canada 1, and that came from me going to University of Pittsburgh. I had my little Team Canada sweater on day one, and of course none of my teammates knew it was Team Canada, and they thought I was like repping an Air Canada sweater. So my nickname at Pittsburgh started out as Air Canada.
Nice.
So now I'm Air_Canada 1 on Twitter. I get at least like 1 or 2 seat complaints a year. Like I'll get a lot of like, my flight has been delayed. What will you do about it? And I'll just write back, honestly, I'm doing nothing about it. Like, I am Rachael.
I am not going to help you here. I'm sorry.
So Air Canada 1 on Twitter, Run Rachael on Instagram, and I'm a big LinkedIn girly.
Yeah,
so link in with me.
LinkedIn's the best.
I love it.
I figured you would get more like Vince Carter comments, like Air Canada.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
you know.
I'm not a basketball person,
That's
so
okay.
I don't even know what you're referring to.
He's
That's
got like,
embarrassing.
that's okay. You know, I might be missing the mark too. Who knows? You got to follow you on LinkedIn from all the updates when it comes to Biosteel, what you're doing. Rachael, as you know, the way we wrap up every episode is we ask our guests their biggest piece of advice for the next gen. I'd love for you to share between Biosteel, between all of your years as an athlete, post-athlete, coaching now.
Yeah.
What do you got for us?
I got 2 things.
Ooh.
So first, you are the boss. You are the most important person. You put yourself first. And that doesn't mean you can't do things for other people, because I love to volunteer. I love to give back. But you have to prioritize yourself. And that's your mental health, your emotions. Like, you have to prioritize your time, your schoolwork. Like, you are number one. And I think that's so important. Not to the point where it's like, I'm number one, but like internally being like, you're number one, like put yourself first.
You looked like you could do it pretty well there.
Every night before bed, you're number one. I'm number one. No, I think that's really important. And I think that some young athletes have it kind of the wrong way, where it's like, I'm the best. It's not I'm the best. It's like, I'm the most important because I'm the only one looking out for me at the end of the day. Everyone wants good things for you, but you're the only one in control of like everything. So that's number one. Number 2 would be just like, have your eyes and your head on a swivel. I think there are so many opportunities just peripheral to every hallway you walk down, every person you're introduced to, every school you go to, every competition. I wouldn't be anywhere like today if it weren't like, I've been out of sport for 4 years now. Every job I've had since has been somewhat related to someone I met 10 years ago. And that's where, again, like that CEO was like, she's just Forrest Gump and she walks around. It is because I've built such strong foundations over the 10 years. So I think young athletes, every time you walk into a room, genuinely, don't just pay attention to who's in the room, but get to know the people in the room. Look behind every door. You would never know that like someone in a school cafeteria or something like that. One of my biggest advocates was my painting teacher. Like it's those people who are going to support you that aren't expected to. It's going to be like the CEOs who give you 3 months off to go to a training camp or something like that. So just be really like head on a swivel, eyes in all directions at the people and the things that are around all the corners that are unrelated to your sport as well.
Love that. You sound like a LinkedIn influencer. It's amazing.
Bro, I love LinkedIn.
I know. Hey, I guarantee you're going to get at least 1 more follower today. So.
Let's go, 2.
Yeah, maybe 2. We can make that happen. Rachael, thank you so much for coming on the Athletes Podcast. 142 of them. Hooking up Biosteel, hooking us up for our tour.
Yes.
It's amazing. Keeping us hydrated. Really appreciate your time.
We love it. Thank you for having me.